And we're on. Right. Okay. Let's do this thing here. Right. Hello, everybody. So welcome again to another art class. I think we're on number 5 now. So as I mentioned last week, we won't be here next week or the week after, because I'll be away next week, and then the week after that is half term from schools. So I shall be on holiday that week as well. So we're going to be continuing with what we were doing last week, which was working with the parrots that we were doing. Or, if you're finishing off something else, that's absolutely fine. Please work on that as well, or a mixture of both. So I was working on a picture of a parrot last week, as I just mentioned. And we started off by doing an underpainting. So first of all, a drawing with a layer of thinner acrylic paint over the top, so you could see through to your drawing still, and then you know where everything's going to go and so forth. If you wanted to use a grid to do your outline of your bird first, then that's also fine. Of course, you could rub out the grid though before you paint over the top, because it can be hard to remove the pencil lines. All right. And then we were using a limited color palette, so we were using white, and then what I call like a chromatic black, which would be ultramarine and burnt umber mixed together, half and half, and that will give you a really nice dark tone, which when you add white to it, obviously turns out to be quite a little bit grey. But when you're using the white or indeed the black, if you add a little bit of water to it, you can do like a thinner tone or layer or tint of those colors over the top, so you still got some of the green or whatever it is you've used underneath coming through. But we'll have a look anyway. I'll go over to the wall again, and just so you can see what I'm on about here. So we'll go over to the other bit. Right, so you'll remember me showing you all of this last week. So we've got Polly over here, and on the other side there we've got the version of the drawing with the ink, sorry, not the ink, the acrylic over the top, with a nice even coat. So remember I said to you, if you're doing this, if you're at this stage now, you'll need to use a flat brush, and you brush vertically and horizontally, and keep doing that, maybe adding a bit of water when the paint sort of starts to dry a little, but just a touch of water. Don't overdo it, because it thins it out, although you can layer back over the top if you want to. But as you can see in this drawing, you can see back through the image to the original drawing, or through the green paint to the original drawing. Now I I put on here the painting that I did last week exactly over the top. I think, yeah, there it is. So this is what we were doing last lesson. And so basically the idea is, when you've done all your tonal work and added the mark making to show the details on the feathers. So let me just see if I can make him a bit big. I'm going to bring him up again in a minute on the other screen. But if we go right in there, you can see all these tiny brush strokes. So the whole of the picture, right from the start, including all of the black and white areas, and there was black and white areas on the feathers up here before I added the color. I used lots of mark making, so very small brush strokes to get that feathery effect on his head there, and on around his neck and so forth, and on the breast down here too. So all of those marks, and as you keep building them up, you get lighter marks and darker marks and so forth, and then highlighted marks on the feathers. So it starts to give a little bit of depth to what you're trying to do as well. And then adding the color on top, I started to do that a little bit last week too. So for instance, with the yellow and the blues over here, I watered down a cadmium yellow and made it almost like a watercolor. So the watercolor will then obviously be transparent It's not, it's acrylic watercolor we'll call it, but it becomes transparent, so you can actually see what you've done underneath and get a sense of those lovely feathery bits, marks that I put in. And the same with the blue over here. All right, now I did actually start as well today as part of the demonstration to put some oil pastel over the top. So oil pastel is, like I call it, paint in a stick in a way. So some of these blue marks that I'm zooming into, you can see they're just dashes in the center there, are actually done with oil pastel as well. So you can really start to because the oil pastel is quite strong, it will work very nicely back over the top of what you're doing. So you can add extra vivid marks back over the top of everything else you've been doing. All right, so this is what we're going to be doing today. Now, I haven't done any work on the background yet, but I may do a little bit today. So in lesson this morning, a few people started to work back over the mid-tone background and add in another color on there as well, which was very effective. So think when you choose your colors, think about what colors you're going to use. So because they can help you make the parrot stand out. I think actually on the photograph here, this gray is actually really nice, because the gray, the softness of the gray helps the colors to look a bit more vivid. However, you might decide to use some opposite colors. So we've got this lovely yellowy orange here. I call it yellow. So you could perhaps even put a nice deep dark purple in the background, you know, very dark purple. And then that may help the parrot to really pop out of the background as well. You could also use a dark green or something too, of course. But there you go. There's a few ideas on that. So we'll have a look at my desk. Hopefully we've got the camera on. Yay, we've got the camera on. That's good. I shall be continuing to work on Polly today with all of the techniques that we've discussed. Now, if you want to try a little bit of oil pastel, these, and you've got some, if you haven't, then maybe some other time, you know, when you've got the materials. But we've got all these lovely colors in this set. This is these ones aren't too expensive actually. They're Pentel oil pastels, but they're, you know, they're quite they're not too soft. Some oil pastels you get, particularly the more expensive ones, the Centilier ones that we've used in class before, are really soft, and they really are like a stick of paint. But these are quite good because you can keep drawing with them and they don't run down straight away, and you can get nice sharp marks with them. So I'll just do a couple of those to show you a bit of what I mean. And I'm down here. See if I can get in any closer. I should be able to. Let's just have a look, see if I can get in any closer. This. Let me do it at the moment. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing, that's why. Hold on. Canon. There it is. Got it. Right. Let's see if I can get zoom right in. You can really see what I'm just distorted it because I've changed the shape of it. But let's see if I can sharpen that up a bit as well. Yeah, that's about as sharp as I can get it on here. So just down here, look, you can start putting in some nice marks, and it's just like drawing back over your painting and adding in some extra details and having a bit of fun again with some of this nice mark making that we've been looking at over recent weeks. We'll put a little bit of this blue in, and let's try lighter blue back over the top. So I'm using the marks, even if you could say I'm using lots of dashes, a little bit like perhaps Van Gogh might have done, and he used all his dashes and things. So you know you can do this of course with a brush, but it's sometimes quite nice to try something else out. So I'll apply some more of these during the lesson, some more of these marks. Let's try a little bit of this over here. It come out so clear, but it does add a bit more of a zingy sort of vivid colour back into the picture as well. So this is something perhaps you might like to try out as well. Let's bring that back in. Ooh, Mr. Pirate. Yeah. Zoom back out again. Here we are. Okay, so if you've got any questions about any of that, please ask. If you haven't got oil pastels, then don't worry about it for now, but it's an idea, isn't it, for working back into your design and perhaps adding some marks. You could also, of course, once you've added a bit more of the background in, you might then decide to add some leaves and foliage behind there as well. But if you're going to do something like that, it's often a good idea as well to have some reference material to look at while you're doing that as well, like in other words some pictures of some leaves and things that might go quite well with the idea that I've just said there. All right, so let's just see if I can get in a bit further. This always happens when you start fiddling around with things in the middle of a lesson. There you go. Perhaps do a bit more in a minute. Okay, so so thanks for listening to that. And has anyone got any questions or wants to show their work and ask any questions, then please do so, because that's what we're here for.
Good. I've got two.
Okay, so I'm working in a similar way that I did last week here, which is to put in the highlights and the shadows using the burnt umber and the ultramarine for the shadows, and then lots of white for the highlights and so forth. So it's quite a long way of working this. There are quicker ways of doing it, but I was really trying to emphasize and enjoy all the mark making that you can do with a brush. So I'm using quite a small brush again here, and doing lots of very small dashes to build up the back of this beautiful parrot's head, with all those lovely feathers sticking out in a punky sort of way. So I'm building those in, the shadows and the highlights first, and then after that I start to add in some blues over the top. And you'll notice just over there at the side I've got a black and white copy of the photograph, which at the beginning here I'm using to illustrate that you can do this. You can use black and white, and it helps you to see those tones without the distraction of the colour. Although in honesty there's not a great deal of distraction from colour here with the colour here, because we've got just blue and dark blue really for the feathers. But as we're working in this monotone underpainting way on this section, that's absolutely fine really, to illustrate that. One of the things that happens with this painting that I really found that I enjoyed towards the end there was, and you'll see it just at the end of the video, is when I added some pure white back into the front there to really emphasize the highlights on his breast at the front there. But there you go, look, we've got all the background in. Now over here I noticed that on the black and white one that we have a darker tone for the wing here, and I thought I would start by adding a darker tone or wash back over the green to bring that to make that a little bit darker right from the beginning. So I've done that there with a bit of burnt umber and ultramarine mixed together. And here you can see me then adding the blues over the top of the feathers, as you can see. Um, and I do this to begin with very lightly and very thinly with the blue, just to start to see how it's going to work. And I did realise that I probably needed to go much heavier with that blue to really bring it forward like in the photograph. I was working from a photograph on my desk as well, which often a little bit lighter than the photograph. I did look up at this one on the screen as well, which was useful. So that gave me, you know, this kind of realization that I needed to make those colors nice and vivid and bold as well. So I kept adding the blues back over the top. One thing about the painting as well is that we've got this lovely green in the background, so we end up with like a bluey green on the feathers, which bluey green is one of my favorites as well. So I did really enjoy seeing the bluey green on there as well. So as you can see now, I'm using the burnt umber and ultramarine black that we made there to sketch out with the brush some of those markings or the shadows for the feathers. Start building that up, and then we head straight in there with the blues. So once I got the main feathers and things in place, I started to add the blues, and then in a bit I start to add highlights over the top of that blue glaze wash that we've got on there. And that starts to help those feathers stand out a bit more. So while that's sort of drying off a little bit, I thought I'd have a little play around with the grey in the background. So this was a grey that comes from from that black that we'd mixed. But then I thought, let's add a bit of colour in there. There is some colour in the blue in the background, so I've added some of the primary blue into that grey to start to lift it out a little bit more. The nice thing here, I think, is where the edge of the beak is picked up a little bit more. The highlights that I've added on the edge of the beak have been picked up by that grey that I've started to add in the background. So here you can see I've used white and the primary blue together. I'm using a small brush again, doing lots of those little dashes and then adding highlights back on top of that blue. So I'm working slightly differently to I did on the rest of the bird, but you can see I'm painting in the shapes of the feathers rather than thinking I'm drawing a feather. I'm drawing the shapes of the feathers. So I'm observing those shapes in order to build them in. Now, one of my plans for this was just to do the top half and of the wing, and not do so much on the lower part of the wing because I'd like to emphasize that area around the face that we're looking at here. I don't actually get to the end of the painting, but I'm pretty happy with the results of it. I think it's turned out pretty well. There's lots of other little details we could work on. I'd like to put more of the background in. But it's been a pretty good experience painting this picture. So much detail, so much character in these birds. So I am working on the feathers, layering up, adding tone, adding highlights, taking bits out, pushing back bits forward. Here I've lightened the grey once more. I'm changing the tones. I think that's about as far as I get with that. As you can see, this was towards the end of the lesson, so I'm adding in some of these lovely deep oranges over the top of the green and the yellow that we've got on there already. To give it a little bit of depth around there, or the shadows rather. And you can see me just here helping some of the students with their work. And then the little bit that I enjoyed coming up now is adding an extra bold highlight around the chest of this lovely bird. It just sort of brings it out a little bit more. Really enjoyable lesson. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it. Please don't forget to post your work on our Facebook group. Love to see it. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks when we'll continue with our experiments and painting and everything else. Have a lovely couple of weeks. See you soon, guys. Chaps, chapesses, everybody. Bye.